This is the Rebel HR Podcast, the podcast about all things innovation in the people space. I'm Kyle Rode. Let's start the show. Hello, Rebel HR community. We are here podcasting at the State SHRM Conference in Iowa City, Iowa. So extremely excited to bring you some content today. With us, we have Brenda LaMarche. She is with Honkamp Payroll and Human Capital Management Services. She is the VP of HR Services, and we're going to be talking all about her journey and how she is driving change in the HR space. Welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on today.
Well, we are so excited to have you. Happen to be right next to us in the booth, and so congratulations on being our first interview at the State SHRM Conference. So thanks for joining us. I want to start off with a question that I really love to ask this question to HR professionals, because the stories that come out are usually pretty interesting. What got you into the field of human resources?
So the field of human resources was introduced to me in high school. I have a mother that was a nurse and was demanding I go into nursing. And unfortunately, Blood and I don't get along.
Yeah, me either.
And a friend of mine, of our family, said, well, how about human resources? And she took me up to the University of Iowa and actually showed me the University of Iowa's degree program in industrial relations and human resources, and I was sold. Went to college the next year at Iowa, did it in 4 years, got my degree, and started my career.
I love it. So for all of you listening out there, Brenda is what I call a unicorn. She actually went to school for HR, which is pretty rare for many HR professionals. So, and just never left. Huh?
I never left.
Okay.
Nope.
So you have been in the field for a number of years. I'm sure you've seen so much change in the realm of the work that you do. What are some of those changes that you think are maybe most exciting for you coming up here in the future? What are you seeing kind of as you forecast out what's next for HR?
I love seeing some of the technology that's coming out that makes HR more effective and more efficient and stops us from spinning our wheels in the piles of paperwork. When I used to do speaking engagements, one of my favorite pictures that I would put in my speaking engagements was, do you feel like this person? And it's a person sitting at a desk buried in paper. All you can see is their face.
Yeah.
And in the way technology is changing and a lot of things are moving to more secured, more electronic ways, it really makes my heart go pitter-patter to see more and more as I can help businesses move to an electronic format instead of paper.
Yeah. So that's one of those, that's an area, and if I'm being perfectly honest, in my job, there's some offices stacked full of paper, and it's like an insurmountable task. And so that's one of those things, like, I think about it, I'm like, I'd really like to do that. But finding the time to do it, finding the kind of the motivation to truly start to convert some of this paper to paperless is a little bit daunting. So as you think about, some of these technological advancements or this opportunity to reduce some of this frustration, what are some of the things you would recommend that we think about in our day-to-day?
I would say asking yourself why, over and over. Why? Why are we doing something this way? Is there an easier way? Is another question to be asking yourself as you're going through and working your day-to-days. I work with a lot of businesses that are going through transitions, that are growing, and or have people that have left their businesses, and their people that are coming in don't know how they used to do things. And so I spend a lot of time working with and consulting with businesses of all sizes and helping them to convert out of paper into an electronic format. And some of the strategies that we utilize is outsourcing, where most HR departments in today's world actually struggle because they just don't have the manpower to deal with everything that is being thrown at them. And having an outsourced partner that helps you with that day-to-day, really, I have found, makes a huge difference for the customers.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a good call out, and I think about that in the same context of, there's a lot of talk around like AI right now, right? Everybody's talking about AI. what we're really talking about is it's a capacity issue, right? It's like I don't have time to spend on this administrivia but it still needs to get done. So how do I do this in a way that enables me to, function at my highest and best use in my job? And my argument is typically if you're an HR professional for your company, your highest and best use is supporting the team.
Yes.
Not going through reams of paper and making sure that you're checking all these boxes on administration. So if you can outsource it and execute your highest and best use, that's what you should be thinking about.
Absolutely. And I think also there's a lot of fear with outsourcing.
Yeah.
And because it's an unknown for many, many companies and of all different sizes. And outsourcing is a great opportunity for companies to be able to focus more on their business operations, more on supporting their teams, and can actually be a valuable resource for those businesses as it leads towards success, especially with the hiring problems that all of us experience in today's world, where it's nearly impossible to hire teams and qualified staff.
Yeah.
And AI is a great resource for us when it comes to being able to help with wording or being able to help. But one of my biggest caveats in the world of HR is great. Use some of that, but you've got to trust and then you verify, because you can't solely rely on AI.
Yeah.
And, everybody's seen at the pictures where people have 6 fingers or, it's a great example I like to just use for fun.
Yeah.
But, AI is a great tool and it needs to be thought of as a tool to make something easier. I know that I have personally used AI to help with wording and in communications to try and make sure it's at a level where multiple people of different education backgrounds can understand.
Right. I like AI for that email where someone sends you like a shitty email and you're like, oh, you want to respond with a really like a scathing response. This is a hack. If you put that into ChatGPT and take the email and say, hey, write me an email in a professional tone, but say like, screw you. It's perfect. It's beautiful. I love it. That's my favorite AI application. But you're absolutely right. Like and I love that saying. I heard this, when I first started my HR career. It's the whole trust but verify, right? Like you don't want to be untrusting, but you still need to kind of have some level of verification that things are working correctly and that you're not having issues with whatever.
Right. Well, and that comes into play too, not only when you have staff that you work with that you're responsible for, but it also works in the same realm if you have an outsourced partner where you're trusting but verify and you confirm that, yes, they're doing what you need to be doing. It's consistent and it's working in the way that you planned and expect it to be working.
Absolutely.
And it's something that we strive to do on a daily basis within our HR team, supporting customers, where we're reaching out and constantly working with them to make sure, hey, are we doing what we need to be doing? How do we do it? Do we need to be doing something different, better, whatever? It's a partnership.
Right.
It's a partnership.
Yeah. So, I think it's a great call out and something, I would just say, as you're struggling to get everything done at HR, and I actually don't know a single HR professional that would say, yeah, we got it all figured out. Yeah, we got plenty of time to get it done. Yeah, the reality is we're all facing that. Outsourcing could be an opportunity, it can be a little bit daunting, I think, from from that standpoint. So when you have a client or an HR professional come to you and say, hey, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. I think I want to outsource. What steps do you take to kind of figure out where you can be the most help and, what might make the most sense to outsource? How do you help them think through these problems?
So it typically starts with meetings and phone calls where we literally just kind of sit down and start talking to them about where are their pain points. Mm-hmm. What are their biggest challenges? What are some of the things that are frustrating them the most or that slow them down? Open enrollment's a classic example. As we start thinking of it is open enrollment season.
Yes, it is.
Everybody loves open enrollment season. And I can't tell you how many people approach us on, hey, do you have a solution that's going to make open enrollment easy for me and my employees? And of course I do. But we walk through on what is frustrating you. How is it frustrating? What are you doing today? And open enrollment doesn't have to be done on paper. And
Right.
that, trying to move and shift to an electronic open enrollment option will save such significant amounts of time and frustration for the HR team as they move through that open enrollment process.
Right.
And that's one of the, things that I think is such a tremendous help to take a few minutes. And setting up or initially transitioning to something like that is painful at first, but once it's set up, it turns into a smoothly oiled machine.
Yeah.
And saves such an amount of time going forward. It's totally worth the pain to get something set up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would, just like a real world example of that, there's so many processes that, in my current role, when I joined the company a number of years ago, we were doing them on paper, right? And it was, or we were kind of using the technology tool, but we were allowing paper for some cases, or some people were using the mobile app, but some weren't. The reality is, like, the more kind of flexibility you have related to like paper enrollment, as an example, just using that as an example, the more complexity you're actually putting on yourself. Right. And while it might be comfortable because you're used to doing it that way, or your employees are used to doing it that way, by taking the time to invest in building a process, a system, making it tech enabled, and then spending the time on training your team how to use it, as opposed to helping your team do the actual thing, you're going to save yourself so much headache and hassle on the back end, because the problem is you've got this trailing administrative workload that just bubbles up when you don't have a consistent process enabled. So daunting up front, but my argument would be like worth it on the back end. But you have to be willing to kind of be aware of what is this time investment up front, what is the integration and kind of implementation look like, how do I train, how do you support it, and all that stuff. So I'm assuming you help clients think through these projects and what this actually takes.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, what we typically do is we actually handhold our clients through the entire process. And, for those that are choosing our HR services, we actually will do the setup and everything, and then run open enrollment, for example, for them. And so not only it was painful at first to get get everything set up and collect all of the information, but then I've had clients come back that say, "Oh my God, I didn't have to run the entire open enrollment, track down the employees, get the information to the carriers. You were just a lifesaver for me over the last 2 months."
Yeah.
And that's where outsourcing really truly can make a difference in that HR team when it comes to trying to just manage the nightmare of what I call open enrollment.
Yeah. This is such a timely topic, because like I'm literally doing this right now. I'm like, oh God, and we're doing carrier transitions and all the stuff, and everything that goes along with it. And having that like partner to walk you through it, to help make sure everything's working, to run the audits, to validate, and then help you out with the actual change management. So nice. So worth the investment. So I'm curious. So you've done this HR gig for a while. It's really kind of it's been your focus, your passion. You literally built a business around it. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and fix anything in the world of HR, what would that thing be? What would it be? I'm just fascinated to hear your perspective.
Wow.
So I can see it's like you're running through I've got 27 different points that I would make here, but I have to pick one. So.
Right. That's exactly what's going through my head is, I can't really say that.
You can say whatever you want. Where this is there's no rules here. I mean, maybe your company cares.
No, I really can't say what popped into my head. Ultimately, if I had a magic wand and there was one thing that I could fix, I would actually wish that some of the required reporting that employers have to do and have to maintain, even with a system, has reached a level of such an obnoxious, ridiculous, stupid level that the governments are requiring, and that each state is different. That's what my magic wand would fix.
Oh, yeah.
Is that we have one set of requirements that apply to all states, and we didn't have to
I'm going to high-five you on that one. We're high-fiving. For those that are listening, we are high-fiving by the microphone because I could not agree more.
Yeah.
And I'm a multi-state employer, international, right? So it's like these regulations are crazy.
It's insane.
So
yeah.
Now it is job security to some extent for your company, but I agree.
It is. And the multi-state is just such a level of ridiculous challenge, and even clear down to the ACA reporting. It's, totally. The employees aren't even fined anymore, but the employers still have to do the stupid reporting. And that's how I feel about that reporting, in general.
Right.
But
but we jump through the giant flaming hoops because that's what we do. We're here to solve these problems for our companies. But my argument is it takes you away from some of the value add, right? Or the highest and best use, right? Like it's, and that's where I think getting back to the heart of this conversation where we're going is being open-minded to changing the things that you do, identifying those pain points, and then actually coming up with solutions. I think the other challenge that, from my standpoint in my seat, we're also in my company going through budget conversations right now, is validating that the cost is worth it, right? But the reality is that it's an investment in your systems. It's an investment in your people. It's an investment in human resources. But that's not always easy to validate. So as HR professionals are kind of like, I'd like to outsource this or I'd like to outsource that, but there's not a budget for it, or I need to cost justify this with my CFO. What advice would you give them as they're trying to make the pitch to their groups?
In today's world, the easiest cost analysis to make the pitch is what is it going to cost you to have staffing to cover what you need the outsourcing vendor to do?
Yeah.
Because, especially with the labor regulations changing January for exempt level of positions for the salary threshold, many employers are struggling with how do we deal with that. And more employers are actually starting to take a look at, is outsourcing actually a viable solution to help us afford to be able to continue to provide the right services to our employees.
Yeah.
And that's how you approach it through the CFO. It's got to be dollars and cents. It can't just be philosophy and would-be nices.
As much as we love waxing poetic in human resources, that it does come down to dollars and cents. The good news is we have access to all those reports, so we should be able to work it. Here's a hack for anybody that's struggling with that. Just go find the nerdiest cost accountant in your company that loves doing nothing more than analytics and tell them, hey, I'm trying to cost justify this. Can you help me figure out how to do this? They'll pretty much do it for you. And then you can tell your CFO, hey, so-and-so helped me with it. And they're like, oh, well, then it's probably legit. There's a hack. All right. With that being said, we have time for one more question. So I have one more question for you, Brenda. Where does HR need to rebel?
Ooh. Where does HR need to rebel? That's another really tough question. I should have known that.
I should have
prepped
you on that one. I didn't know.
Yeah, I should have known that was coming. Where does HR need to rebel? HR needs to rebel on, I think, a little bit on the culture in the workplace. Over the last 4-5 years, I would say cultures have changed a lot. And I think that there's a lot of confrontational situations that are occurring more in the workplace today than what used to be occurring previously. Mm-hmm. And HR needs to rebel a little bit and put their foot down on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in the workplace.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Be comfortable advocating for the right thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can't just tell people anymore, do what's right. Because it's interesting, what's right may not be known.
Yeah, that's a little bit vague. Right. I love it. Brenda, thank you so much for joining us. How can our listeners connect with you, learn more about the work that you do, and find your company?
Check us out at honkamppayroll.com. We are a HR payroll and outsourcing vendor and provider payroll service bureau, and we work with companies nationwide in the United States.
Awesome. We will have that information in the show notes. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
All right, that does it for the Rebel HR podcast. Big thank you to our guests. Follow us on Facebook at Rebel HR Podcast, Twitter at Rebel HR Guy, or see our website at rebelhumanresources.com. The views and opinions expressed by Rebel HR Podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any of the organizations that we represent. No animals were harmed during the filming of this podcast.
Baby.